And we're live. We're now streaming. Hi, this is Sharon Weinstein. I'd like to welcome you to another excerpt of the Healing Healthcare interviews with our contributing authors. We are so excited to welcome you today. And we have a fantastic program in store for you that I'm really super excited about. So a warm welcome to the Healing Healthcare Authors Tour with your hosts, Sharon Weinstein and Dina Redinger. Dina is not with us today, co-authors of the book, Healing Healthcare, Evidence-Based Strategies to Mend Our Broken System. Think about it. Nurses remain the backbone of healthcare, and little has been done or even studied to remedy a system that is truly in crisis. If this is not addressed now, humankind will suffer. This book is packed with solutions to the problems that plague our healthcare systems today. These are the problems that lead to troubling sentiments among prospective nurses or existing nurses. Nurse leaders share their experiences, their thoughts, their evidence, and their strategies to ensure the health of our healthcare. What you will find within are actionable steps for fixing a system that is currently suffering in silence. We must get this book into the hands of those making decisions, and we need your help to make that happen. But before we start, we want to acknowledge you and thank you for joining us today. We have viewers from across the globe, so please use the chat and let us know where you're calling from. If you see this in the replay, you can still comment, and yes, we will respond. I am super excited about today's chapter and today's guest. Our guest today is Nicole George, whose chapter, Inspiring Gen Z to Stay, is a part of our workforce section. Let me tell you a little bit about Nicole. She's a military spouse, a mom, a nurse leader, a nursing excellence promoter. She is director of the Nursing Center of Excellence at Press Ganey, responsible for driving and implementing strategies that are aimed at supporting nursing clients across the globe. She previously served as the Assistant Director of Operations at the Magnet Recognition Program, where she managed day-to-day operations and had the privilege of collaborating with exceptional healthcare organizations worldwide. Nicole is currently finishing her PhD in nursing at the University of Texas Medical Branch, where her focus is centered on the experiences of millennial nurse leaders in the acute care setting. So welcome, Nicole. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you, Sharon. So excited to be here.
I'm thrilled to pieces, and I know that our viewers are as well. Let me just take a moment and hold up the book. This is what we're talking about. This is what the excitement is about. We now have a new website. We have lots and lots of peripherals, and we are so thrilled to share it with you and to hear your message. So, Nicole, why are you involved in this process? What brought you to say yes to the ask?
So excellent question, Sharon. So for myself and just my own professional development, I have mentors. And so one of my mentors actually was asked to contribute to the book, but they felt that this would be a great opportunity for me. And so when I learned about the workforce section, this is what the ask was. I thought that, you know what, my research is on millennials, but I've had to study various groups, various cohorts. So why not write something about the next generation? Millennials certainly are the largest cohort now, but 10 years from now, it'll be Gen Z. So I felt that it was important to also to highlight this cohort in this book, to your point, where we're hoping to really make a change to today's landscape in healthcare.
Yeah, I think that that's absolutely true. I think it's correct. I think back and I think sometimes I'll give presentations about generational work and I'll talk about teenagers and I'll say, do you have a teenager in your home? Do you know what that feels like? And if not, have you ever been a teenager? And what did that feel like? And what do you remember about your experience? So yes, moving on to Gen Z is really important. And in your chapter, you share what we know about Gen Z and how we might meet the needs of Gen Z nurses. Please tell our viewers what is different about Gen Z and how can nurse leaders support this particular group of professionals?
So another great question. So each generation has their differences, and they really are influenced by socio-historical factors. So things outside of what we do and what we work every single day. What's most important to Generation Z, there's several things. I'll highlight a few just for the sake of time. There's a heavy focus on self-care and optimization of mental health for this cohort, this age group. Growth is also important, and then flexibility. And so if we're looking at these several characteristics and, trying to apply these to an acute care setting or even another healthcare setting, as nurse leaders, our strategies must center around some of these. So to the point of flexibility, how are not only Gen Z nurses, but all nurses have flexibility in their scheduling? What does that look like for your state, recognizing that different states may have different stipulations? When we're looking at self-care and mental health, maybe beyond the employee assistance program, what opportunities are there for those nurses? Is there something maybe you've seen at a conference or read in a journal that you can advocate for and bring back because it will be meaningful to this cohort and other nurses, of course? And then growth is also important. It's important, of course, to all nurses. More so millennials and the Gen Z. How are we growing nurses within their current role? Growth doesn't always mean getting a promotion to the next roll up. You can grow just in clinical ladders. So what we're seeing now certainly are some organizations are revamping their clinical ladders. Are we including nurses in that process? Are we growing nurses in different leadership type programs that may exist? Again, maybe this is something more formal, maybe there's something homegrown. So leadership programs, succession planning, are we truly looking into and are we in tune to those nurses who have that great potential to be a great leader one day and tapping them on the shoulder and bringing them along the way in succession planning activities? So those are just, again, a few characteristics. And the one other thing I want to touch on is, their intention to stay, certainly, the characteristics I just mentioned, but other generations and things that they have seen, whether it be within healthcare or just in their personal lives, can affect their intention to stay as well. The Gen Zers, their parents, for the most part, are Gen Xers. And so they witness their parents' work ethic, their experiences in the workplace, again, whether their parents are in healthcare or not. And some of those experiences have been good, maybe some not so good.
Yeah.
This generation, what we're seeing too, is they are the most prone to being entrepreneurs, right? And so we're even starting to see this in healthcare. So how can we, again, as nurse leaders, provide opportunities based off of, again, what we know about this generation, maybe wanting to be more entrepreneurial? What are some innovative ways that we can bring that into our practice in healthcare? So just really, to your point, thinking outside of the box, we have to be innovative to address and keep these nurses and future leaders here with us in either the acute care setting or whichever healthcare setting that you're in today.
Well, you raised some really important points. First of all, when you talked about mental health and growth and flexibility and self-care,
Mhm.
et cetera.
Mhm.
So to me, mental health and self-care are very tied together. I've been involved in that space for a long period of time. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, Dr. Richard Chavis wrote some of the advanced praise for our book, and he's the founder and CEO of ComPsych, the largest mental health or
Mhm.
help EAP program in the
Mhm.
world
Mhm.
at this point.
Mhm.
And some of his points are really very, very well taken.
Yeah.
I think that we don't pay enough attention
Mhm.
to mental health and self-care. When I say we, I don't mean just from the top down. I don't
Yeah.
mean just the healthcare system or the culture within the organization.
Right.
I think some of us
Yeah.
at the bedside or who are
Absolutely.
delivering care
Yeah.
don't think, well, gosh, this could happen to me.
Yeah.
They don't think
Exactly.
that way. Their minds don't work that way. There are
Right.
so many steps ahead
Yeah.
of certainly where I was as a
Mhm.
student nurse or as a new grad. So I
Mhm.
think that's one thing. Something
Mhm.
else that you mentioned was the concept of the ladder and
Mhm.
different organizations perhaps changing that structure.
Mhm.
When I think in terms of a promotion, it's not sometimes it's not an upper promotion, a grade up or whatever
Mhm.
it is within the organization, whether it has a number attached to it, like within our veteran system or
Mhm.
not,
Mhm.
but it might be something that is a lateral move
Correct.
that
Yeah.
can expose that nurse to other areas
Mhm.
in which they might have an interest that could also spur some growth. So there are
Absolutely.
lots of opportunities there. And
Absolutely.
then when I look back, I think even more about this concept of entrepreneurship that you raised.
Yeah.
I have the privilege of serving as the online community manager for the ANA's innovation community.
Mhm. Mhm.
And some of the things that I read about every single day
Mhm.
are so inspirational. They're
Yeah.
so motivating.
Yeah.
And I think, gosh, these nurses really have it.
Yeah.
They had an idea and they ran with it. They
Yeah.
didn't just share it with somebody else who happened to be a detail rep from a company on the floor.
Right.
And then that person took it back to their company and got a patent on it and made a lot of money on it.
Right.
These nurses are doing something totally different, whether it's in practice or process.
Right.
They
Absolutely.
truly are entrepreneurial, and we need to not just explore that, but applaud it, don't we?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. And I think the other comment I'll make about self-care, to your point, is and I'm speaking now as nurse leaders, we permit what we promote, right? And so as a nurse leader, if a Generation Z nurse is witnessing or observing their nurse leader, working all hours of the day, they're getting emails at 11:30 at night, they may feel that that's the expectation. So
Exactly.
we have to model an effective approach to work-life effectiveness, self-care. When we're on PTO, we're on PTO, we're not responding to emails, so on and so forth. So we also have to model that approach as well.
Right. And
Yep,
does that mean turning on notifications on your phone or turning off notifications so that you're not bothered between, if
absolutely.
you have the pleasure of being asleep between 10 p.m. and 6 a.m.,
Yep,
that you're not bothered during that time or whatever your
absolutely.
downtime happens to be?
Absolutely. And
Yeah, you're
empowering
right.
your nurses to do the same, right? If they're
You
off and
do.
if they're away from the hospital or the healthcare setting, to tell them that they can your off time is your off time.
Yeah,
Yep.
you need to walk the walk and talk the talk. You need to do
Yes.
it. I'm
Yes.
guilty myself. Sometimes I'll say, "Oh, I'm
Same.
not," and then people say to me, "Did I really get an email from you
I
at 3
know.
a.m.? And what were you doing at that
Yeah.
time?" And it was just, I don't know what it was.
Yeah,
Whatever it was, an idea spurs you and you have to go act on it. But
exactly.
there are
Yeah.
other ways to do that, you
Mhm.
know.
I agree. Yep.
Yeah, I think that I think that you've raised some really good points there.
Mhm.
So let me ask you a question. Of those comments that you made related to mental health slash self care, growth, flexibility, more entrepreneurship, what's most important? What do you think is the biggest issue among all of that?
For me, it would be the mental health piece and self-care. To your point, they go hand in hand. I think not only for the Generation Z, but for every nurse that is practicing today, those are very important because we have to be present. Our cups have to be full in order to give to others and care for others, which is what we do every single day. So for
Right.
me, I would say that those two are most important, more so now, and I think we've all experienced this in the past 4 years. I think the emphasis on mental health and self-care have been, and I've only been a nurse for 15 years, but in the past 2 to 3 years, we've talked about this more than I've ever heard it
Oh,
talked about. So I think for me, those would be the two greatest, most important.
and where does that start? Does it start with culture within an organization? Does it start top down? Does it start with the employee, especially the Gen Z employee,
Yeah.
having expectations and making demands and getting what in fact is needed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think certainly, I think it's all of the above. I think that nurse managers, I think that directors, I think that team members, I think the responsibility is on us all, knowing what we know now that this generation has it's very important to them that they have self-care and mental health. What do we do with that as nurse leaders, right? So if we're hearing certain things on the floor, what are we doing? What resources are we providing to them, whether that be PTO, whether that be mental health resource A, whether that's EAP, whatever it may be. So to me, it's empowering our teams to speak up. It's empowering and equipping nurse managers to be ready to respond and put interventions in place. Senior level leaders within the organization certainly need to have infrastructure and support in place. I think, again, EAPs are great, but there are other things nowadays, again, spurred the past couple of years that are available that we know are available and are working. Literature supports this as well. So I think it goes all around.
Hmm.
It's certainly something that everyone has a responsibility to ensure that they take care of themselves and for nurse leaders to ensure we're taking care of our teams.
Right. And if all else fails, there's an app for that, isn't there?
Yeah.
There's an app for
There are
everything.
several apps for that. Yes,
Yeah, yeah, there are
absolutely.
several apps for that. You're right.
Yes,
What
yes.
about supporting? We talked a little bit about leadership and we talked about promotions and we talked about those kinds of things. I'm curious about, at least your opinion. What do you think about the nurse who loves being at the bedside, who doesn't want a promotion? Do they need to be respected for what they find the greatest joy? What
Oh,
brings them the greatest joy? What is part of their journey that they're truly, truly loving and why they respected for why they don't want to move up?
Oh, absolutely. I think that those, whether you have a nurse who's fresh out of school and goes back for their to go to be an APRN 1 or 2 years, or you have a nurse who's going to be on the floor for the next 10 years, I think that, to your point, we absolutely have to respect that. We have to we have to still equip them because healthcare is ever changing.
Mhm.
So being sure, recognizing, I recognize that this is, you don't have any desire to grow, and that's okay. Can we bring them into shared governance? We still want to value their voice and their expertise. Are there other committees in the hospital that we can have their voice part of?
Right.
I know you don't want to grow promotion wise, but we just revamped our clinical ladder program. I think that this is something you should consider going for. So absolutely, I think we can respect where they are, but we can still encourage their professional development where they are as a clinical nurse on the at the bedside.
Right. And
Mhm.
allow them to upskill, to mentor
Mhm.
others, the
Oh,
next
absolutely.
generation of
Precept.
nurses, to
Yep.
provide those clinical experiences that
Yes. Mhm.
everyone needs and not everyone got, certainly during COVID.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Absolutely.
one thing, simulation is one thing,
Yeah.
but the real deal is something totally different, isn't it?
Very different.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes, indeed.
Yeah. I
Yes.
think we're on the same page. Let me ask
Yep.
you a question.
Yep.
If you had one takeaway from your chapter, one tip that would drive transformative change, what might that be?
I have thought about this. So for me, it's recognizing that Generation Z, the oldest group of Generation Z, they haven't reached 30 yet. They're not 30. Okay. And so the youngest group, they're still in middle school. And so for the next 10
Isn't that
years,
hard to even imagine?
I
Our next
agree.
generation of nurses is in middle school.
They're
That's
still in middle
frightening.
school. They're still in middle school. And so recognizing for the next 10 years, 10 to 12 years or so, nurses will be entering, Generation Z nurses will be entering the workforce. The younger generation nurses who are in middle school now are going to have very different experiences than the Gen Z nurses who are in healthcare today. And
Mhm.
how are we preparing for that, right? To your point, we're going to have ones who want to stay at the bedside. We're going to have ones who want to go into be APRNs. We're going to have ones who want to go into education, academia, leadership. How are we preparing them to lead? 10 to 15 years from now, these generation, the older generation Z nurses will be senior level leaders or C-suite level leaders in their
Right.
respective fields in healthcare. Not only how are we keeping them to stay within where they are, how are we fostering their growth? Things will look very different 10 years from now, I think, in healthcare. These are digital natives. They grew up with technology more so than any other generation. They're going to heavily influence the rapidly progressing tech that we're experiencing today, whether that's tech, with equipment at the bedside or AI, right? So I think just recognizing that certainly millennials are the largest group today, but 10 years from now, the landscape will be very different. How are we equipping, fostering the growth, and preparing Generation Z to lead healthcare? To your point, the point of this book, Healing Healthcare, how are we preparing them to continue to heal and to promote healthcare, which will look again very different?
Wow. I cannot wait for our viewers and our future readers to read your chapter. The entire
Um,
book is really exciting,
yeah,
but for those who have an interest in this concept, and even those young nurses themselves, or those soon to be young nurses, if they want to know what they're really getting into,
yeah, yeah.
if they want to have a voice and to speak up and to speak out, they must read what you have written. They
Thank
must.
you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm
Yeah.
excited. I agree.
So am I. I am so thrilled that you were able to join me today. And on behalf of Dina, I thank you as well. And Nicole, you've done an amazing job of really encapsulating what it is your chapter is all about and sharing it
Yeah.
and really spurring interest in terms of not just the book itself, but in that particular content.
Mhm.
So we're thrilled that you could join us. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so
It's
much.
been a pleasure. For those of you out there, I want to invite you to watch the rerun of this particular recording. It will be posted on LinkedIn. It will also be on our YouTube channel as well. We also want to invite you to join us next week for a subsequent interview with yet another contributing author every single Thursday except for July 4th, when we're doing it July 3rd instead. We will be interviewing one of our contributors, and you can always watch the replays on the YouTube channel as well and on the Healing Healthcare LinkedIn and Facebook pages. We thank you again for joining us. Thank you again, Nicole George. Good luck with
Thank
your
you.
process. I'm thinking of you over the next 90 days and what you
Thank you.
have going for you.
Thank you.
Wish you well.
Thank you.
Thanks again for joining us.
Take
Thanks,
care, everyone.
everyone. Take
Bye-bye.
care. Bye bye.